It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight reviews of Tiny Beautiful Things, In the Blood, and As You Like It. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. And good evening. I am Charles Gross.
And I'm Leslie Hoban Blake, and we welcome you. I'm wearing a new hairdo. I'd love to know if you have any comments.
Yes, that is at 2Aisle
Yes.
on Twitter.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Tiny Beautiful Things.
A lovely title.
A lovely title with a lovely adapter, and that is...
Nia Vardalos.
Yes, from My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yes, she's lost quite a bit of weight.
She has, and she looks great.
She does.
And although ironically, her character's name is Sugar, or more correctly, she becomes Sugar. Sugar is a help columnist, like Dear Abby.
Dear Abby, kind of.
And essentially, aside from the first part of the play where she agrees to take on the role, the entire play is her getting questions and answering them.
And there's a cast of 3 or 4. I think it's
right. I think it's 3.
I think it's 3. Anyway,
aside from her.
And they play everybody. So every
Yes.
time there's a question, they take on a new
Right.
character. And the set is interchangeable.
And some occasionally, I think some of the same characters pop up, but you're really not going to know it one way or the other because these characters, except for their questions, have no distinctions.
No, and they don't have any personalities, but they're very well played by the group of 3 who play them.
Yes.
The thing is, the way I like the set very much. I have to say, it's
her home.
It's her home. It's a gigantic, sprawling place.
Which lets you know that it does not take place in New York.
Right, and it's obviously a home. It's not an apartment. And the thing is that it's constantly in motion. The refrigerator opens, and the table is being set, and things are being done.
Right.
So it's very nicely staged. That's about the best thing I can say about it. It's based on a book by a very famous self-help kind of person.
Right. Thomas Kail directed it.
Tommy Kail, yes, who directed Hamilton. I mean,
And it's Cheryl Strayed wrote the book.
Who wrote the movie that was made about the woman going out into the wilderness. Oh dear, it was a big movie. Anyway, I don't remember the title of that either.
Let's come back to this one.
Well, yes.
The bottom line is, during the play, we find out more about this woman, quote, Sugar, who until the end keeps herself anonymous. We find out a bit about her life, but the problem is it's too little too late. There's nothing really happening except she's running an advice columnist, and you really don't have to go to the theater for that. Just, pick up the newspaper.
It's very interesting.
And they don't build on it.
I love to look at aggregate reviews, and now that we have a whole bunch of places where you get numbers and things, and I love to look because I never know. I kind of like to have my own voice, but nonetheless I like to see what other people think. And I was amazed at the number of people writing. I cried. I was so moved. It was such a. I didn't cry. I wasn't moved.
No.
I'm sorry. It's not that there's anything wrong with Nia Vardalos' performance. She's very.
All the performers are good.
She's very intelligent, and she helped to co-write this.
And you also have Teddy Kenez, Hubert Point Dujas, and Natalie Woodlams Torres.
Okay. Point du jour.
Yes.
Point du jour, but you were close. Okay.
Right.
Point du jour.
Point du jour. Could be.
That's okay. What's French? But the point is, and everybody was fine. There's nothing I can say wrong about anybody in the show.
The staging.
Yeah, the staging was good, but the concept, and
Yes.
it was Nia Vardalos and Tommy Kail and some other person who did that together. And it must have sounded like a great idea at the time. We'll take this book and we'll turn it into, but it's really just people saying whole bunches of things, and they make a philosophical point, and it didn't touch me in any way.
No. Well, I think the problem is it feels very random, and at first I really was enjoying it. I was having a lot of fun with it, but the show is...
Well,
and
why?
On the show is,
why were you having fun with it?
I just thought it was interesting, the people coming with her problems, and she's answering them, and she's picking up the role, and how this is taking over her life. She's a writer, and she has a project that she's working on, and she seems to be totally into this. And that's what might have made it more interesting if we could have seen the other aspects of her life. What is she giving up to be Sugar? The role, there's no glory, there's no pay,
yeah, that's a good point, right.
on this. Or
why is there no pay on it? I didn't understand there was no pay on it.
Because that's just how it is.
Oh, well,
I guess she's doing this online.
Yeah, she is, but it makes no sense. That lost me right there.
That was at the beginning of the play. It's made very clear this is a voluntary effort, but it appears to be taking over her life, and we never see how that affects the other aspects of her life. Or I was thinking maybe there'll be this one writer that she has some sort of relationship with as Sugar, and there'll be some revelation here. But again, it's pretty much the same. Over and over, and it's random.
It's not only random, but there's nothing extraordinary. They're very ordinary people with very ordinary questions, and those things obviously that what is that thing about the universal becomes the particular when it's about everybody. So we've all faced just about everything that these people are talking about: breakups and dying and whatnot. But it just didn't. I mean, I've seen a dozen plays in the last couple of weeks that have people living and dying and some move me and some don't. This did not move me. So that, I think, is the problem for me. And I think that's what it's supposed to, obviously. So I'm going to be in a vocal minority about this one. Maybe we both
not here,
are.
you're not.
No, I guess we're together in a minority.
Yes,
what would you give this?
I would give this 2, maybe 2.5 at best.
Yeah, I'd go 2.5 because of the staging.
Good staging, good
acting.
performances.
And the direction.
I mean, I would love to.
It's an idea that I didn't quite understand. I hate to burst your little balloon, but
would my Big Fat Greek Wedding make a good musical?
Sure, why not? Did you see it?
Oh, the movie, yes.
Yeah, it would be great,
Yes,
especially if you can get Andrea Martin to play her original role.
Okay,
that would be.
She probably would be game for that.
She could do that at any age. She could play that role.
We have your next project for you.
That's it.
And I would like to see her.
I think they were working on it as a musical, weren't they?
I thought they were, but
I think so. I think maybe it got stalled or something.
Well, she's busy being Sugar now.
Yeah.
And again, I'd love to see her come back with something else, but.
I've never seen her live on stage before. I think she did a lovely job as far as doing that.
Look, good performances, good production, but the play just doesn't gel.
Well, speaking of a play that gels or doesn't gel,
I've got
the second of the Red Letter plays that were, as they're being called, by Susan Laurie Parks.
Yes.
And this one is called In the Blood. And as I told you before, I saw these originally, and I remember this one quite vividly. It's about a mother who has 5 children, and they're all by different fathers.
Yes.
And she is at her wit's end. She lives in a city dump. They play with toys that have been thrown into the garbage. The children are played by actors who then become other characters in the play, and they go back and forth between those roles. And Sekon Sengbla, I hope I say that correctly, whom we've seen before in Eclipsed in a marvelous role, has the role of the mother, and it's a very one-note role. It's very mother courage. It's, I must take care of my children. I'll do anything for them, whatever it is. And she doesn't care about the fact that the fathers don't help. She's not really looking for anybody to help. She just wants to be left alone to take care of her children. And that, of course, is where the problems come in, because the community services come along and want to do certain things. And some of the fathers know about her and are embarrassed because she's there. So there are things that get in her way. But if she could just be allowed to take care of her children, she would be happy. And, of course, they're growing up. So they're hearing things from other people, and they have questions that she doesn't want to have to answer. And she probably wouldn't mind having another one, because I think she loves babies in a way. That's part of it, too.
Well, this is a lot more reflective. Susan Laurie Parks did 2 what she calls riffs on the Scarlet Letter. And the first one was F&A, which we talked about on our last show. This was the second one. Of the 2, this is a little more reflective of the original story, because one of the fathers is a preacher.
Right.
And except he's a street preacher, he has no regrets. He has no guilt, like his classic story counterpart, about what he's done.
Right.
He's not going to help her. He promises.
Right.
And interestingly, at the beginning and the end of the play, you see these people saying, she's a disgrace, she's terrible, she should be, sterilized, and this and that, and really they're dumping on her. And I'm sure this isn't what the playwright intended, But at the end of the play, you're kind of wondering, do they have a point? Because here is Hester. She, you said she values herself in being a good mother. But by the end of the play, we realize that she's not a good mother. So
she's as good a mother as she can be
well,
under the circumstances.
that doesn't cut it. That
Well,
doesn't,
Okay, all right.
being as good as you can be does not necessarily make you qualified for a position. And it's very clear that at the end of the play she is not.
If the play is an indictment of the welfare system and what it does to unwed mothers with many children, then I think it succeeds, because it shows that the welfare system essentially takes what could be a viable situation and cuts it apart.
Okay.
In the same way that they want to cut her apart.
I think that is certainly a valid, because the people who are supposed to be helping her, and they do try and help her, but they're also screwing her figuratively and literally.
Yes, but they help her only insofar as it's written down in their mission statements,
But Hester's not doing anything to really help herself. Why isn't she naming the fathers, except to perhaps be reflective of the, of the original Scarlet Letter?
Well,
she would be helping her children if she had more resources for them.
If the fathers
and why
were
is she having
resources.
and why is she going ahead and having more children after the kind of learn something here, Hester?
Isn't that the question that everybody asks when you get a situation like this in real life, where you have a mother with several children by different fathers? The question always comes to the fore: why is she having more? I can't answer it. It's not my place.
By the end of the play, you start off being very sympathetic toward her, but at the end, where they repeat the opening scene, basically condemning her, you're wondering, well, maybe there's a point there. And I was disappointed with the play. I mean, I thought F&A was a really good, well done and play, but it was just too intense, too bloody for me to really enjoy. Here, I don't think this measures up. It's certainly not as intense, but I'm not, I don't think the playwright quite gets her point here. If she's trying to condemn the welfare system, yes. If she's trying to condemn unwed mothers, I think, I don't think that's what she wants to do, but I think she essentially is what she does do ultimately, because Hester is just very.
Let me take what you said and take it
life.
one step further. Let me say what you said. If the welfare system were different, if it simply helped people when they needed help, and didn't make them toe a certain line, then they could have helped her and the children, and that would have been that. And that's not the way the system works. And so this is, I think, anti the system rather than anti the mother. It depends on what you take away from it. Okay,
right.
That's what I
think that's what it's meant to be.
Yes, well, that's.
But I think what it has come out, it is more anti the mother, especially with what happens at the end. I won't give it away. But by the end of the, during the play, you're thinking, oh well, she's got her faults, but at least she's devoted to her children. And by the end of the play, you can't even say that anymore.
I wanted to mention two actors in particular. Frank Wood, of course, we know from Sideman. He's a Tony winner from Sideman.
Great show. I was thinking about that show last season after we saw Bandstand.
Yes. Well, anyway, I'm just mentioning it because he's and Russell Jones, who's been around for quite some time on the off-Broadway scene. I really was pleased to see the two of them. And then the others are fairly new to me. Anna Reeder, Michael Braun, and Jocelyn Baio. It's not that I don't. I probably have seen them, but I don't remember them as well. And Sekon, of course. I didn't think that this was a role that she was able to bring very much to. It kind of was. It became one note after a while.
Agreed.
And
that was part of the problem.
Well, that is part of the problem. I mean, she wants to do what she wants to do, and they're not going to let her do it. And
well, what is what she wants to do in the best interest of the children.
That's a good point.
And I cannot say yes. And I don't know, what system would work better.
No, I agree.
For her,
there's no way to actually.
There's no, you can. It's easy. It's very easy to condemn what you've got there, and these characters.
Yeah.
Who represent,
you may have
are flawed and are a problem, but no one is showing us anything better. And to say that she's better off living in a dump, Come on.
I think that becomes a flaw in the play.
Yes.
I think, and it's not necessarily. We are talking about a flaw in the system, but maybe it's just a flaw in the play that it doesn't give us an out. Of course, there is no out for her anyway. Other than the out that's provided.
But
that we're
again,
not gonna talk
that's
about.
to me that is as much her fault as it is the system's. I will say there was one part of the set. Sarah Benson directed this, by the way.
Excuse me. By the way, she's illiterate. She's trying very hard to learn how to write.
Right.
And all she gets to is an A.
Right.
That's where this whole the connection.
Well, again, that's
to that.
another failure of the system to educate her.
Well, yes, totally.
Louisa
and yet she wants her kids to go to school and get an education.
Right.
So in that sense, she's I feel for her as mother to mother. I feel for her, which I know I'm supposed to, but I do anyway.
And yet, didn't at any point of the play you want to say, Hester,
Yes.
screw your head on right?
Yes, I did.
Come on.
I did. There were places
See,
where I'm not going to say I didn't.
People have to be responsible, especially if they're going to be parents. And this,
But there was no thought process involved here. She's a very young person who went out and had 5 kids, one after the other.
Yeah.
They're all like little.
Right. Well,
one head
think,
taller
Hester.
than the other.
You think maybe.
Well, I don't think. Look, we have a society. We have an underclass that does this on a regular basis.
Yes.
And
Doesn't make it
although
right.
it seems to be particularly one race, it isn't, because if you go into the hinterlands where it's another race, you have the same problem. You have children having children.
Yes.
And it's because of a lot of things. It's because of not appropriate sex education in schools. Which is
Now we're getting into a totally different.
But you say, Hester, why did you stop doing this?
Why
don't you stop doing this? Nobody ever told her to stop doing it.
We don't know that.
Well,
you're making assumptions. I will say one thing about Louisa Thompson's set. There's this garbage chute that periodically, and I probably was paying more attention to it than I should have. Dumpster,
sure.
But it to me it did stand out. So, what is your conclusion?
Well, I think as I recall it, and my memory's a little wonky on this, but I think as I recall it, I think it was more successful before. This had a tremendous set, and the dump. I don't think it was quite as. I'm not sure that it was quite as big, the set, the last time. I could be wrong. I wasn't as moved by it this time as I was the first time. I did feel for her and her condition. I did take her side against the system, but. In terms of the play itself, I wasn't thrilled by it this time as I had been before. And overall, I would say for all the effort and whatnot that went into it, I would give it a 3.
I would think I would give it 2.5. And it's interesting, you see, her versus the system. I bet if I were to ask you what taking her side means, you'd have a very hard time answering.
It means not letting the system beat her down. That's what it means, taking her side against the system. Somehow to have the system change in a way that would help her and not make her do things that are against her, whatever. I think her belief system is very limited because she's a very limited person.
Right. But I think, again, with her not naming the fathers, and again, I know that reflects the original Scarlet Letter, but there she is failing to take responsibility
yes, there's no
for
question.
her. And
no question
so
about that.
she shoulders
what
a
difference would
large
taking that responsibility make in the story, though? I mean,
well,
we don't know.
She would have money, presumably.
But the one guy whom she does know and whom she does
she
know,
knows. She knows the
doesn't.
others. She knows.
No. But I'm saying so she doesn't get anywhere with the Reverend. There's no guarantee that she's going to get anywhere with the others.
But the government might.
Well,
they
might.
He's worried about. He's worried about
publicity.
Again, yes.
We're writing a different play.
Yes, we're speculating. So the play does cause you to think.
It does.
And that I will say that for it.
And based on that, well, you'd still give it two.
Yes,
2.5. Okay. We're coming up to Stephen Adly Guirgis and Jesus Hopped the A Train.
We are?
Suzanne. Yeah, this is the end of Suzanne's. No, we're not tonight. But I'm opening this up, and inside it tells me that this is their season, and we're coming up to Stephen Adly Guirgis.
Okay.
And we're going to get
this
two
is
of
at
his
the Signature
plays.
Theater.
This is at Signature,
Okay.
and we're getting 2 of his plays. I'm very excited.
Does he run into
see.
the cast of In Transit while he's doing that?
No.
Okay.
But you'd be very surprised to see what he does do. So.
Well, unlike Leslie, the CSC has now been around for 50 years.
Oh, sweetheart.
And new artistic director. And
Very famous new artistic director.
yes,
John
this
Doyle.
is John Doyle.
Yes.
And this is As You Like It by a guy named Shakespeare. I guess he is an appropriate playwright for a classic theater. And this is original music by Stephen Schwartz, and I think this is the first thing I've seen of his since Wicked.
Wow.
Stephen, what have you been doing the last 12 years? Come on. You had a great score with Wicked. It was your best.
Hey, you know what?
Follow
He's
up.
getting fat and happy with all the money that's rolling in. That Wicked is one of the biggest hits ever.
This is true.
That and The Lion King, man.
Yeah.
They're indomitable.
This is true.
I don't think they've ever even been on half-price tickets, you know? I mean,
I don't think so.
They've never
but
had to be.
Getting back to Shakespeare.
Okay.
This is an abridged version.
Yes, very much abridged.
Very much abridged. Basically, it is the story of Rosalind and Orlando. Rosalind is a princess whose father was banished by his brother, basically overthrown by his brother, but she stays at the castle because she and her cousin,
Celia.
the daughter of the brother, obviously, are so close, but they end up running afoul of the uncle, and they go into the woods. You have to go.
Yes,
Da-da-da-da-da-da. And for some reason,
Forest of Arden, gorgeously designed.
she decides to dress up as a man to do it. I'm not quite sure what
It's
the.
safer for
Then,
a
well,
woman
why,
to do
then why
that.
didn't they both?
Because one of them can be a girl and one can be a boy,
Okay.
and then it's okay.
All right.
They didn't
And
have to
then
both
ends
do
up
it.
running into Orlando, who is also running from his brother, who swindled him out of his inheritance. And Orlando is in love with Rosalind, but Rosalind is now a boy, but she agrees to tutor him. And basically, listen, I'll show you how to get
Well,
Rosalind.
it's the same thing that happens
Yes.
in the same plot line that happens in Twelfth Night,
Well,
where
who knew?
where Olivia and plays against what's her name, Viola, dressed as a boy who pretends to be her love for that particular
Oh,
thing.
God. Well,
Yeah,
that
did you
guy who
forget
wrote The
that?
Twelfth
Yeah,
Night,
I
you
know.
should choose
He should,
Shakespeare
yes,
for
he should do that.
plagiarizing.
But here's what's interesting. John Doyle took out a lot of bits and pieces.
Yes.
Some were necessary, some were not. Now, the things that we're not even going to talk about. But the reasons for certain things happening are not necessarily there anymore. I didn't mind. I got to be honest with you. I've seen so many As You Like It's that I was very happy to know that this was going to be, and it was 2 hours. It still wasn't 90.
Well, I think it was more like 90 minutes, and no intermission.
No intermission. And the lights were on while it was on, so it's very interesting. You could watch people,
Yes.
whether they were nodding off or watching. And I think people were really watching it and enjoying it. That was the feeling that I got.
To a large extent.
The music by Stephen Schwartz kind of was a jazzy sort of score. The costumes were quasi 30s to 50s, mixed up kind of thing. There was a lot of playing.
Well, Ellen Burstyn in a suit and a hat on stage, and she's sitting there, and you keep thinking, why did she gotta
She's
talk?
sitting there with a giant book, and you can see that
And
she's in
kind of-
essence telling the story. She turns,
or at
she
least
looks for
monitoring it.
Yes, maybe she's being the prompter. She
observing
might
it
be the prompter.
and deciding, well, when do I have to step in here?
Right. And she's wonderful. She does the 7 Ages of Man speech. She plays Jaques, and she does the 7 Ages of Man, and she just kind of throws it away. She just speaks it, and then she gets down to the last part, and you realize she has gray hair and she's older, and wow, it just hits you that last age of man, sons, teeth, sons, everything. It was just beautifully done. But this is a wonderful cast.
And you also have Andre DeShields.
Well,
Still magical even after all these years from The Wiz.
stealing every scene where he's on stage. He wears this incredible costume. It starts
Yes.
with
He's touched on the clown.
he's touched on the clown, and he's not dressed as a clown per se. He's wearing a tuxedo jacket.
No,
but
he's
also
very
got-
proper. He's very proper.
He looks like
And
a
he
butler.
struts.
And he struts. And he struts and he moves and he's Andre DeShields, man. He goes in and out and he just does his thing.
Yep.
And he's lovely. And I just wanted to say that I don't know her work, but Hannah Cabell, she's obviously from some show that I don't know.
Well, she was in The Man for All Seasons and The Father.
Yeah, but she's
Broadway.
on some television thing that I didn't get
okay.
to see. Mr. Robot. She's on Mr.
Oh, okay.
Robot. I guess that must be what it is. So I didn't know her work, but she's quite lovely as
Yes,
Rosalind.
she is.
very, very convincing as a boy.
Yes.
As many.
And she doesn't do so badly as a girl either.
No, she's very lovely as a girl. And Quincy Tyler Bernstein plays Celia, and she's very sassy as Celia. She pulls out all of these quirks. Even though she doesn't have lines, she's in the background making faces.
And I should
doing
also
things.
mention Cass Morgan, who was one of the original Dinettes in Pump Boys and Dinettes. And the one disappointment that I had with this play was, you know, many of the cast members were also musicians. In the play, they were playing the score, and I'm thinking, couldn't they just give her a couple of spoons or something, and let her bang a little?
Oh, that's funny.
I would have liked to have seen
But
that.
and
she could have done it well.
That is a John Doyle touch, that everybody playing an instrument
Right.
and whatnot. Now, the big instrument person for me on this is Bob Stillman. You've never done that before. Bob Stillman, I've always wondered what would happen if that happened. I guess you just pick it up. Bob Stillman plays both of the Dukes, both the good Duke and the bad Duke.
Right.
And he plays the piano. Now, Bob Stillman has been on stage. We just saw him in Talk House, where he played, again, piano.
Right.
And he was in Grey Gardens, where he, again, played the piano.
Okay.
But I've never seen him do this much acting. And he was lovely.
He was.
He did a really good evil Duke, and he did a really good lovely Duke.
Yep.
And I was just so pleased to see him do that. Audrey DeShields walks away with the show, as far as I'm concerned. Ellen Burstyn is fine, but she doesn't have much to do.
She's fine. She's basically she's sitting there most of the time. What did you think of Kyle Scatliffe as Orlando?
He was okay.
That's about right.
I'm sorry, nothing special. He was
Yes.
fine. He was handsome and nice, and he did a good job. Maybe if they'd had the wrestling match, which they left out, it might have made,
Yes. I will tell you, the last production I saw was with Elizabeth McGovern, who I think is coming back to the theater this year. And she was wonderful as Rosalind. And the whole production really blew me away. This one was a little slow at times.
even
abridged, which I found interesting.
Yeah.
All in all, I enjoyed it, and I would give it, say, 3, maybe 3.5 on a good night.
I would give it 4. I had a lovely time.
Definitely not.
I smiled through the whole thing.
I had an enjoyable time.
Even though the lights were on, I
not,
smiled through the whole thing. Let me just ask you a question, though. Is she coming back in time in the Conways? Is that what she's doing?
Who?
Elizabeth McGovern, is that the show
She's coming back
doing?
in something, I'm not sure what it is.
Okay, because I know I'm seeing that this weekend, and I hope that's what it is.
I'm sure they're going to flash that on the screen.
Okay, very good.
All right. And that is our show for this evening. And when you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.